My affair got exposed during holiday party. Altercation between husband and coworker became violent.
Hey Reddit, my name is Ashley and I'm a 33-year-old woman. My husband's name is Justin and he's a 34-year-old man. We've been married for about 6 years and have one kid who I'll call Max. He's about 5. My husband and I, we've known each other all our lives. Crazy things have happened, and I thought I'd share them here with you. My husband brutally assaulted the colleague I had cheated on with at a corporate party. It's been a whirlwind, and I'm still trying to make sense of it all. Justin and I have known each other practically forever. We grew up in the same neighborhood, went to the same schools, and shared a lot of memories. But it wasn't until after college that we started seeing each other in a different light. Our first official date was a mix of nostalgia and excitement. We decided to keep it simple and went to our favorite childhood pizza place. Sitting across from each other, I couldn't help but smile, thinking about all the years we'd known each other. Justin was charming as ever, telling me stories from our school days that made me laugh until tears streamed down my face. After dinner, we took a walk through the old neighborhood, reminiscing about our adventures as kids. It felt like no time had passed at all, yet everything had changed. We even stood on the street corner where we used to wait for the school bus. Justin took my hand and looked into my eyes, and in that moment, I knew that our relationship was something truly special. For our second date, Justin planned a surprise outing. He picked me up in the afternoon and drove us to a nearby beach. It was a beautiful day, with the sun shining brightly and a gentle breeze blowing. We walked along the shore, talking and laughing, enjoying each other's company. Justin had packed a picnic, and we sat on a blanket, eating sandwiches and watching the waves. As the sun began to set, he took my hand and led me to the water's edge. We stood there watching the sunset, and in that moment, everything felt perfect. After the sun had set, we walked back to the car, hand in hand, reluctant to let go of the magic of the evening. Justin drove me home, and we sat in the car outside my house, talking and laughing until late into the night. It was a perfect second date, and I knew then that I was falling for him. For our third date, Justin surprised me by taking me to a cozy little Italian restaurant downtown. The ambiance was romantic, with soft lighting and Italian music playing in the background. We shared a delicious meal of pasta and wine, laughing and talking as if we had known each other for years. After dinner, Justin suggested we take a walk in the nearby park. It was a warm summer evening and the park was beautiful, with flowers in full bloom and fireflies dancing in the air. We walked hand in hand, stopping occasionally to sit on a bench and enjoy the view. As we walked, we talked about our hopes and dreams for the future. Justin told me about his job and his passion for music, while I shared my love for art and travel. It felt like we were opening up to each other in a way we hadn't before, and I knew then that this was something special. For our fourth date, Justin took me to a local art gallery, knowing my love for art. It was a small, intimate gallery featuring local artists, and I was thrilled to explore it with him. We spent hours wandering through the exhibits, discussing our favorite pieces and sharing our thoughts on art and life. After the gallery, Justin surprised me by taking me to a nearby park where a live jazz band was playing. We sat on a blanket under the stars, listening to the music and talking late into the night. It was such a romantic and thoughtful gesture, and I felt incredibly lucky to be with him. As the night came to a close, Justin walked me back to my car, and we shared a sweet and tender kiss goodnight. I knew then that I had fallen absolutely in love with him and wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. For our fifth date, Justin planned a romantic evening at a fancy restaurant in the city. He picked me up and surprised me with a bouquet of my favorite flowers, roses, which made me feel so special. The restaurant he chose had a cozy atmosphere with dim lighting and soft music, creating the perfect ambiance for a romantic dinner. Justin had made reservations, and we were seated at a private table by the window, overlooking the city skyline. Throughout the evening, we shared stories, laughed, and enjoyed delicious food and wine. Justin was such a gentleman, pulling out my chair, refilling my glass, and making sure I felt comfortable and cared for. After dinner, Justin suggested we take a walk along the riverfront. It was a beautiful night, and the city lights reflected off the water, creating a magical scene. We walked hand in hand, talking and laughing, enjoying each other's company. As the night came to an end, Justin walked me back to my car, and we shared a passionate kiss goodnight. I legit couldn't stop smiling as I drove home, and I felt so grateful to have him in my life. For our sixth date, my heart was fluttered with excitement. Justin and I had been growing closer with each date, and I couldn't wait to see what he had planned for us this time. From our first meeting as kids to our first kiss, each moment had been filled with laughter and love. Justin had a way of making me feel special, and I cherished every moment we spent together. When Justin arrived, he greeted me with a bouquet of flowers and a warm smile. He looked handsome in his suit, and I felt a surge of affection for him. We drove to a fancy restaurant downtown, where Justin had made reservations for us. The restaurant was elegant, with soft lighting and a romantic atmosphere. Justin led me to our table, and we sat down to peruse the menu. We talked and laughed, sharing stories and jokes as we enjoyed our meal. After dinner, Justin surprised me by taking me to a nearby park. The park was beautifully lit up with fairy lights, and a gentle breeze rustled through the trees. Justin took my hand and led me to a secluded spot overlooking a lake. We sat down on a bench, and Justin pulled out a small box from his pocket. My heart skipped a beat as he opened the box to reveal a beautiful necklace. It was simple yet elegant, and I knew it was perfect for me. Taking the necklace, Justin gently placed it around my neck. I could feel tears pricking at the corner of my eyes as I realized how much Justin truly cared for me. He leaned in and kissed me softly, and I melted into his embrace. As we sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, I knew that this was the man I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. Justin was kind, loving, and thoughtful, and I felt incredibly lucky to have him by my side. Then we decided to move in together. Moving in together was a big step for us. We were both excited to start this new chapter in our relationship, but it also came with its challenges. One of the biggest struggles we faced was merging our lifestyles and habits. Justin was very organized and liked things a certain way, while I was more laid back and tended to be a bit messy. We had to find a balance and learn to compromise on things like household chores and decorating our home. Another challenge was managing our finances. We both had our own ways of budgeting and spending money, and we had to learn to align our financial goals and priorities. Despite these challenges, moving in together also brought us closer. We learned more about each other and grew as a couple. It was a learning experience, but one that ultimately strengthened our relationship. Justin's proposal was a moment I'll never forget. He took me to our favorite spot in the city, a beautiful park with a view of the skyline. It was a perfect evening. The sun was setting, and the sky was painted with hues of pink and orange. We walked through the park. Justin suddenly got down on one knee and pulled out a ring. He poured his heart out, telling me how much he loved me and how he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. It was such a romantic and heartfelt moment, and I couldn't hold back my tears of joy. Of course, I said yes. We were both over the moon with happiness. When we dove into wedding planning, things became more stressful than I ever imagined. Justin's parents, being wealthy, offered to buy us a house in any location of our choosing. It was an incredibly generous offer, but there was a catch. My name wouldn't be on the deed. Justin's parents had never been fond of me, and this was their way of exerting control over our lives. The house became a point of contention between Justin and me. He wanted to accept his parents' offer, seeing it as a practical choice, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being sidelined and disrespected. It led to many arguments and tense discussions about our future, but I eventually agreed and yielded. On top of that, wedding planning itself was overwhelming. There were so many decisions to make, from the guest list to the venue to the flowers. Justin's parents had strong opinions about everything, adding to the stress. I felt like I was losing control over my own wedding, and it strained our relationship. Despite the challenges, we managed to pull off a beautiful wedding. But the tensions with Justin's parents and the house issue did linger a bit. A few months after we had just gotten married, I found out I was pregnant. It was a mix of excitement and nervousness, but we couldn't wait to welcome our first child. We decided to name him Max, a name we both loved. The first few months of my pregnancy were filled with excitement and joy. Justin and I were thrilled to be starting a family together, and we eagerly awaited the arrival of our little one. However, as my pregnancy progressed, I began to experience some unexpected challenges. I struggled with morning sickness, which seemed to last all day and made it difficult to eat or even get out of bed. I was constantly tired, and simple tasks like cooking dinner or doing laundry felt like insurmountable obstacles. Justin was incredibly supportive, but I could see the worry in his eyes as he watched me struggle. My belly grew, and so did my discomfort. I experienced backaches, swollen feet, and constant heartburn. I found it difficult to find a comfortable position to sleep in, and I often woke up feeling more tired than when I had gone to bed. Justin did his best to help, rubbing my back and feet and reassuring me that everything would be okay. Despite the physical challenges, the emotional toll of pregnancy was even greater. I worried constantly about the health and well-being of our baby. Every twinge or ache sent me into a panic, and I found myself constantly checking my phone for messages from my doctor. Justin was my rock during this time, calming my fears and reminding me that we were in this together. And when my due date approached, the anticipation and anxiety grew. I was excited to meet our baby, but I was also terrified of the unknown. Would I be a good mother? Would our baby be healthy? Justin was my constant source of reassurance, holding my hand through every contraction and whispering words of encouragement in my ear. When our son Max was finally born, all the struggles of pregnancy faded away. Holding him in my arms, I knew that every moment of discomfort had been worth it. However, Justin's parents saw this as another opportunity to assert control. They had strong opinions about everything, including the name of their grandson. They wanted us to choose a name from their family's tradition, but we were set on Max. Justin, to my surprise, stood firm. He made it clear to his parents that this was our decision to make, and that if they couldn't respect that, he would consider cutting off contact with them. It was a bold move, but it worked. His parents realized that Justin was serious and eventually yielded, accepting Max as the name for their grandson. It was a turning point in our relationship with Justin's parents. They began to understand that we were a family unit now, and they couldn't dictate our choices. It was a huge relief to know that we could make decisions for our family without interference. As Max grew, so did the challenges in our lives. Justin had always been passionate about music, but his parents never approved. Instead, they influenced him to take a job at their company, which paid exceptionally well. This job allowed Justin to take care of all the bills, which was a relief for me, as I tended to spend more extravagantly. However, Justin's job came at a cost. He didn't enjoy it, and it took a toll on his happiness. Despite the financial security it provided, Justin felt unfulfilled. On the other hand, I had a regular 9-to-5 job in a corporate setting. It wasn't as glamorous or well-paying as Justin's job, but it gave me a sense of purpose. Despite our different career paths, Justin and I were committed to making our marriage work. We supported each other through the ups and downs until I fucked up. The morning of our wedding day was a flurry of excitement and nerves. I sat in front of the mirror and my hands trembling slightly. I couldn't believe that the day I had dreamed of since I was a little girl was finally here. I slipped into my wedding dress feeling like a princess and took a deep breath and tried to calm my racing heart. When I walked down the aisle towards Justin, I felt a wave of emotions wash over me. I was filled with love for this man who had been by my side through thick and thin, and gratitude for all the friends and family who had come to celebrate with us. During the ceremony, when we exchanged vows, I felt tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. I promised to love Justin for the rest of my days, and I meant every word with all my heart. The reception was a whirlwind of joy and laughter. We danced, we ate, we toasted to our future together. And when I looked around at the smiling faces of our loved ones, I knew that this was the happiest day of my life. After Max was born and I took some time off work to focus on being a mother, I started to feel a bit restless. Don't get me wrong, I loved being at home with Max, but I missed the sense of purpose that came with working. I missed interacting with other adults and using my skills in a professional setting. So when Max was about 4 years old, I started looking for a job. Justin suggested that I work at his parents' company, which was a well-established firm with a lot of opportunities for growth. However, I didn't feel comfortable working there. I wanted my own identity separate from Justin and his family, and I felt that working at his parents' company would blur those lines. Instead, I decided to look for a job in the corporate world, and that was how I landed a job at a local company, and I was excited to get back into the workforce. Justin was supportive of my decision, and he encouraged me to pursue my career goals. Starting a new job while also taking care of Max was challenging, but I was determined to make it work. I hired a nanny to help with childcare, and Justin pitched in whenever he could. The person placed in charge of training me was a man named Mark. He was charming, friendly, and always had a smile on his face. From the moment we met, he made me feel welcome and valued. He was patient and took the time to explain things to me, making sure I understood everything before moving on. As we spent more time together, I couldn't help but notice how easy it was to talk to him. He was a great listener and always had a way of putting me at ease. We shared a lot of laughs during our training sessions, and I found myself starting to look forward to our time together. I found myself drawn to Mark's attention and the way he made me feel. His charming demeanor and efforts to make me feel special were a welcome change from the routine I had grown tired of. At first, his flirtatious behavior was subtle, but as time went on, it became more pronounced. He would go out of his way to bring me snacks or coffee, and his compliments on my outfits made me feel noticed in a way I hadn't in a long time. As I reflected on my life, I realized I was stuck in a repetitive cycle that left me feeling unfulfilled. Each day blurred into the next, with little to differentiate them. Taking care of the house, spending time with Justin, and then settling into a predictable evening routine had become the norm. To be honest, it was like I found myself falling into a rut, stuck in the same routine day in and day out. The monotony of it all was suffocating. Every day seemed like a carbon copy of the one before, and I yearned for something different, something exciting to break the cycle. My life had become a predictable pattern and started to feel restless. I was craving a change from the mundane existence I had fallen into. The thought of breaking this monotony with something exciting and different was incredibly appealing. So when Mark's attention and flirtations provided a spark of excitement, I found myself eagerly welcoming it, craving the change it represented. As time went on, Mark and I developed a close friendship. We shared similar interests and had an easy rapport that made our conversations flow effortlessly. We would discuss the latest movies or gossip about celebrities, finding common ground in our shared enjoyment of pop culture. It was refreshing to have someone like Mark to talk to, especially since Justin had become increasingly distant. Justin seemed to have lost interest in our relationship, focusing more on his work and our kid Max. While I appreciated his efforts to make things work between us, it felt like he was no longer the carefree, fun-loving person I had fallen in love with in college. The pressures of adult life had taken their toll on him, and his best efforts were no longer enough to fulfill me in the way they once had. Our relationship had lost the spark and excitement it once had, leaving me longing for the carefree days of our youth. As Justin became more engrossed in our son Max's life, I found myself gravitating more towards Mark. Our conversations extended beyond the confines of work and started spilling into the weekends when I was at home. It was effortless to talk to Mark, and our chats became a welcome escape from the mundane routine of my married life. While Justin seemed preoccupied with our child and other responsibilities, Mark provided a refreshing break from the monotony. I began to realize that Justin's focus had shifted almost entirely to Max, leaving little room for our relationship. While we still shared intimate moments and occasional deep conversations, they were overshadowed by the overwhelming responsibility of parenthood. I longed for the carefree days of our youth when our relationship was the center of our world. Justin's dedication to our son was admirable, but it left me feeling neglected and yearning for a connection that went beyond the duties of parenting. It didn't take long before my outings with Mark turned into something more. What started as innocent activities like watching a movie or taking a walk soon evolved into secret rendezvous at hotels. Both Mark and I were married, so our homes were off limits. We had to find other places to meet, usually resorting to our cars or booking hotel rooms. Since Justin took care of all the household bills, I used my salary to cover the cost of the hotel rooms. Despite the guilt I felt for betraying my husband, the affair with Mark brought a sense of excitement and thrill into my life. There was something exhilarating about sneaking around and engaging in a forbidden romance. While I still loved Justin, I found myself starting to get addicted to the excitement and passion that Mark had brought into my life. As my affair with Mark consumed more of my time and attention, I found myself becoming increasingly distant from Justin. I was constantly glued to my phone, exchanging messages with Mark and making sure to turn off my location whenever I wasn't at home. Despite my slip-ups, Justin seemed oblivious, his focus consumed by work and our son Max. Justin's impending promotion to CEO, as his father was now looking to retire, only added to his workload, leaving him with little time to notice my growing disengagement. That also meant that Max was way closer to Justin than he was to me, and while I was happy to see Justin bonding with Max, I couldn't shake the feeling of being sidelined in my own family. However, then I didn't care because I was still high off the thrill Mark gave me. One time, Justin almost caught me lying. I had told him I was working overtime, but the truth was far from it. I was at a hotel with Mark, lost in the thrill of our forbidden affair. Justin then called again a few minutes later asking where I was. Panicking, I lied, telling him I had decided not to work late and was on my way home. I could hear the concern in his voice, and it tore at my conscience. The thing is, Justin had gone out of his way to bring me food, to surprise me with a thoughtful gesture only to find out I wasn't at work. but instead I was deceiving him, betraying his trust. The guilt weighed heavily on me. I hurriedly ended the call and rushed to head home. I knew that I was playing a dangerous game that could cost me everything, but it was like I just couldn't stop. I see, thank you for the guidance. Here's the revised version. One time I even skipped Max's school play to be with Mark. Max was looking forward to seeing me there, but I let him down. Justin was also disappointed in me. I lied and said I was working hard for a promotion, but I think they knew it was a lie. Max didn't speak to me for days, and I could see him growing even closer to Justin. My heart really aches with guilt, and I know now that I had hurt my son and damaged my relationship with him. My lies only pushed them further away, and I am now realizing too late the price of my actions. Justin made earnest attempts to bridge the widening gap in our marriage. He planned surprise date nights, showered me with expressions of love, and tried to involve me more in his life and our sons. Despite his efforts, I found it increasingly challenging to reciprocate. My heart and mind were elsewhere, busy in the web of my affair with Mark. Justin's gestures, though genuine, felt like fleeting moments of respite from the inevitable realization that our marriage was crumbling, and I was too far gone to salvage it. As my affair with Mark continued, I found myself growing distant from everyone around me. My relationship with Justin had deteriorated, and our sex life had dwindled to nothing. The closeness I once shared with Max also began to fade. I felt lost, consumed by guilt and longing, unable to connect with those who mattered most. My affair with Mark had taken over my life, leaving little room for anything else. As my affair with Mark escalated, it seemed like everyone at the company knew about our secret relationship. Looking back, I'm surprised that none of my coworkers reached out to Justin or Mark's wife to expose the truth. The guilt weighed heavily on me, knowing that my actions were not only hurting my family, but also affecting my reputation at work. Despite the risks, I couldn't bring myself to end the affair. My desire for something different, something exciting, had completely clouded my judgment and was leading me down a destructive path. The company Christmas party was supposed to be a festive event, but it quickly turned into a nightmare. Justin had insisted on coming to my company's party, now that I think about it. I realized he insisted on coming with me because he didn't want me cheating on him with Mark. Either way, so we had arranged for a babysitter to watch Max for the evening. Everything was going well until Mark, in his usual smug manner, decided to approach us. He was incredibly arrogant, implying things and bragging about how he took care of me at work, even referring to himself as my work husband. I tried to brush off his comments and get him to leave us alone, but he persisted. Justin, who had been trying to contain his anger, finally snapped. He turned red with fury and launched himself at Mark. Mark, who clearly wasn't expecting such a reaction, was caught off guard and quickly found himself on the receiving end of Justin's rage. It was a chaotic and humiliating scene, one that I wish had never happened. The aftermath of Justin's outburst was chaotic. He beat Mark brutally, and I was shocked by the violence of it all. Everyone just stood there watching, and no one tried to intervene. Some even said that Mark deserved it, but I couldn't bring myself to get involved, fearing I might inadvertently become a target. After beating Mark to a pulp, Justin stormed off and took the car, leaving me stranded without a way home because we had come together. I tried to stop him, but he was too consumed by anger to listen. From the things he said during the altercation, I realized that he knew about my affair. It was a terrifying realization, but I knew I had to follow him and talk to him. He said stuff like, "I've tolerated you long enough and you think I didn't know." So I knew that he definitely knew, but what I didn't know was how much he knew and how long he had known about me and Mark. Unfortunately, I was left without a ride home. I asked some coworkers for help, but most of them refused, likely believing I deserved the situation. I even tried to order an Uber, but my card was frozen, which I later realized was likely Justin's doing. Eventually, after much pleading, a coworker agreed to give me a ride home, where I hoped to confront Justin and explain myself. When I arrived home, Justin and Max weren't there. I let myself in and decided to wait up for Justin. Max wasn't with the babysitter, so I assumed they had returned home. I tried to track Justin's location on my phone, but he had stopped sharing it. I sent him several texts, but he didn't respond. In a desperate attempt to make amends, I deleted all messages between me and Mark from my phone. Hours later, Justin finally returned home with Max. He seemed much calmer and had even bought Max a lollipop. Justin was surprised to see me and asked why I was there instead of going home with Max. I tried to come up with an excuse, but he saw through it. He asked me why I hadn't gone home with Max, and I knew I had to come clean. I told him everything and lied and even said it had only happened once, and I begged for his forgiveness. I was in tears, and Justin was visibly upset by the revelation. When I confessed to Justin, he looked at me with a mix of sadness and disappointment. He told me that he had known about my affair with Mark for months, and that he had been struggling with how to handle the situation. Justin admitted that he had hoped I would come clean on my own, but my lies had shattered any chance of him forgiving me. He asked me why I would cheat and seemed resigned to the fact that our marriage was over. Justin said he didn't care much anymore, as he had had months to come to terms with the idea that I was no longer the person he thought I was, and that I was now for the streets. I was so relieved when Justin didn't kick me out after I confessed everything. He said he would try to save our marriage, at least for Max's sake. I was overwhelmed with gratitude and cried tears of joy, thanking him profusely. But then he laid out his conditions. He would sleep in the guest room, and I had to quit my job and donate a lot of my stuff to charity as punishment for cheating. I was shocked by his demands, but I was ready to do anything to save our marriage. The next day, I resigned from my job, and although I was supposed to give a 2-week notice, my boss didn't mind because he was planning to fire me anyway because of the altercation at the dinner party. He said it was all my fault, and that he was thinking of even firing Mark, but honestly, so couldn't care less about Mark now. I also even suggested couples counseling, which Justin agreed to. In the weeks that followed my agreement to donate many of my belongings to charity, I felt like I was starting fresh. However, that sense of renewal was short-lived when I discovered that Justin had been deceiving me. He emptied our joint savings account. Despite feeling betrayed, I tried to focus on making amends for my past mistakes, as I felt that was my due punishment for cheating. Plus, much of the money was his anyways, so I couldn't argue with that. I knew that without Justin, I would struggle financially. He was the breadwinner, and I had always been financially dependent on him due to my extravagant spending habits. He earned almost 9 times what I did. I also realized that losing him would mean losing custody of Max, as Justin earned significantly more and Max had grown closer to him. Despite my efforts to rebuild our relationship, Justin abruptly kicked me out one day. I'd gone grocery shopping and I decided to take Max with me, but Justin refused, saying he was taking me out. I didn't mind because Max didn't seem to want to go with me anyways. I was still working on earning back his truth, but that is a slow process. I went out alone, and when I returned, I found my belongings on the porch. I couldn't believe it. After everything, Justin was kicking me out. I called him, desperate to talk, to make him understand, but he didn't pick up. Then a text message came, cold and final. He said he couldn't forgive me and that I had to leave, to go stay with my parents. It felt like a punch to the gut. I packed my things. I felt numb. Tears were blurring my vision. Arriving at my parents' house, their shocked expressions literally mirrored my own. I was still reeling from the fact that Justin had cold-heartedly kicked me out. My parents welcomed me warmly, without pressing for details. It was a relief not to have to explain myself immediately, but that respite was short-lived. Before the day even ended, Justin took matters into his own hands. He created a group chat that included me, my parents, and everyone else that we knew. In this chat, he dropped a bombshell, screenshots from my phone. Private messages and photos, ones I believed were hidden or locked away, were now laid bare for all to see. The betrayal cut deep, adding a new layer of humiliation and pain to the already devastating situation. I felt exposed, vulnerable, and utterly betrayed. My parents, shocked and saddened by the revelation, tried to console me as best they could. They didn't pry, but their silence spoke volumes. I could see the disappointment in their eyes, and it only added to my shame. Justin's actions were deliberate and calculated. He wanted to hurt me, to show the world what I had done. It was a cruel and vindictive move, one that shattered any remaining hope I had of reconciliation. The days following everything was crazy. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages from my in-laws. Their words were dripping with disdain. They accused me of never deserving Justin. They said I was always for the streets and that I never deserved Justin. Then Justin also sent me a message stating he would be serving me with divorce papers soon. As if that wasn't enough, my friends chimed in, their messages heavy with disappointment and judgment. I felt the weight of their words crushing me, adding to the overwhelming emotions I was already dealing with. My friends, who I hoped would offer comfort or understanding, were expressing their disappointment. It was a lonely feeling, knowing I had let down not just my husband, but everyone who cared about us. But the final blow came from Mark. He had previously blocked me, but he unblocked me and accused me of being a vindictive bitch. He claimed I had sent screenshots and pictures of our conversations to his wife. He called me a vindictive bitch, saying his marriage was now in jeopardy. I had to set the record straight, explaining that it was likely Justin who had exposed our affair, not me. Now, with my finances in ruins and my marriage shattered, I have to depend on my parents for support. It is a humbling experience, facing the consequences of my actions and realizing the depth of the hurt I had caused. Not being able to see my child and Justin's distant demeanor has even to the pain. He won't talk to me unless it's for something important. I also know I'm facing an uphill battle in the divorce proceedings. Justin and Wilo likely get custody, and I will lose so much more than just my marriage. My brother, a lawyer, has also acknowledged this reality but can't represent me due to a conflict of interest and his lack of expertise in divorces. So I guess my message to you is please don't cheat. It's honestly not worth it at all. Thanks for listening.
Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd be posting here, especially about something this personal. But here I am. I guess I just need to get this off my chest. You ever have one of those mornings where you wake up and something just feels off? That was me on that fateful day. The birds outside our window were still chirping. The golden hue of dawn was peeking through the blinds, but something just wasn't right. My eyelids felt heavy as I blinked the sleep away, adjusting to the semi-darkness of our bedroom. Stretching, I turned to where my wife, Serafina, usually lay curled up beside me. But instead of the sight I was accustomed to, her wrapped up in her baby blue nightgown, I saw her oddly half-dressed. It looked like she had started to change into her day clothes but gave up midway. Her blouse was on, but it wasn't buttoned all the way, and her jeans were tangled around one ankle. Her other foot still had a sock on it. I blinked a few times, wondering if I was still dreaming. "Sarah?" I mumbled, voice groggy from sleep. She seemed a bit startled, almost guilty, as she looked at me. Her usually vibrant hazel eyes looked a bit distant. "Oh, hey," she replied, her voice sounding a bit out of breath. "Why are you dressed like that?" I asked, trying to sit up, the sheets wrapped around me. She hesitated for just a second, but that second was enough to set off alarm bells in my mind. "It was just really warm last night, you know? I thought maybe if I changed, I'd cool down a bit, but I got tired and decided to just lie down for a bit." I frowned, trying to process her words. We had air conditioning, and it was always at a comfortable temperature. In fact, she'd often tell me she felt cold during the night, so this didn't add up. "You sure you're okay?" I pressed, feeling a strange knot of worry forming in my stomach. She forced a laugh, her eyes darting away for a second. "Yeah, just one of those nights, I guess. You know me, always overthinking stuff." I wanted to believe her, really I did. And maybe if it had been any other day, I would have just taken her word for it and moved on. But something, some gut feeling, told me this was just the tip of the iceberg. For a moment, we just looked at each other. There was a tension in the air, one I couldn't quite put my finger on. But instead of pushing further, I decided to let it go, thinking maybe I was just overreacting. "All right," I said slowly. "Just let me know if something's up, okay?" She nodded, giving me a weak smile. "Always." I turned back around, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. My gut told me something was off, but I brushed it off, thinking maybe I was just being paranoid. Oh, how I wish I had listened to that nagging feeling. Edit. Wow, didn't expect this to blow up. Thanks for the awards, kind strangers. We'll update soon. It was a typical Tuesday afternoon. Work had been grueling that day, so I decided to take a break at my favorite downtown Chicago cafe, Bean and Whistle. The cozy ambiance and top-tier coffee always managed to soothe my mind, even on the worst days. Grabbing a corner seat by the window, I settled down with my laptop, a steaming mug of cappuccino, and a blueberry muffin. The warm, rich aroma filled my senses, and I felt the stress melting away. That is, until I overheard the conversation. The cafe was relatively quiet, with just a few other patrons around, their murmured conversations creating a soft background hum. But 2 tables away, a couple of guys were in a deep discussion, their voices a bit too loud for the setting. I tried to focus on my work, but the name Serafina caught my ear. That's not exactly a common name, and it immediately piqued my interest. "I'm telling you, man, Drax and Serafina have been sneaking around at night. one guy with a scruffy beard and glasses was saying. His friend, a taller dude with tattoos peeking out from under his shirt sleeve, laughed. Man, if anyone found out, there'd be some serious drama. Scruffy Beard leaned in. I mean, I couldn't believe it either, but my buddy saw them at Moonlit Lagoon last week, all cozy and stuff. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. My heart raced, and my palms started to sweat. The name, the mention of secret meetings. It was too much to be a coincidence. But then, what were the odds? Chicago was a big city after all. Maybe there was another Serafina out there, involved with someone named Drax. Trying to calm myself down, I took a deep breath and mustered up the courage to approach them. Hey, sorry to intrude, I began, trying to keep my voice casual. But I couldn't help but overhear you talking about Serafina. Mind if I ask how you know her? Both guys looked up, surprised. Scruffy Beard raised an eyebrow. Why? Who's asking? My wife's name is Serafina, I replied, trying to keep the trembling out of my voice. Just curious. Tattoo guy snorted. Small world, huh? But bro, there are probably tons of Serafinas in Chicago. Don't think too much about it. Yeah, man, Scruffy Beard added. And besides, the Serafina we're talking about is into some artsy stuff like painting or something. Does that sound like your wife? Trying to put on a brave face, I laughed it off. Nope, not at all. My Serafina can't even draw a stick figure. Thanks, guys. Returning to my table, I tried to shake off the unease, but it clung to me like a second skin. I wanted to believe it was a different Serafina, but a nagging doubt had settled in my heart. The events of the morning and this random cafe conversation were too coincidental, and the storm clouds of suspicion began to gather in my mind. Edit. Seriously, this week has been a roller coaster. Thanks for sticking around, folks. I'm still processing everything. We'll keep you updated. I've always been a man of logic, the kind who needs evidence before making any decisions. And that's what led me to our home's security system late that night. The uncertainty, the nagging doubts. I had to put them to rest, either to confirm my worst fears or to clear my wife's name. I told myself it would give me peace of mind. Booting up the system, I rewound the footage from the past week. Each night played out in fast-forward, familiar scenes of Serafina and me coming home from work, ordering takeout, watching movies, the usual couple stuff. But then, 2 nights ago, the scene shifted. It was around 1:30 a.m., a time when the world outside was still, and most were deep in sleep. The infrared camera caught a shadow moving towards our front door. The figure was tall, slender, wearing a cap that hid most of his face, but not enough. As he moved closer, the side profile became clearer, and my heart sank. Drax. I had seen his face once or twice in Serafina's old college photos. I never paid him much attention. To me, he was just a part of her past. But now, here he was, sneaking into my home in the dead of night. The footage showed him typing in the passcode to our front door, a passcode only family knew. The door opened, and he disappeared inside. My hands clenched into fists, nails digging into my palms. The clock ticked on, turning minutes into hours, and just before dawn he emerged, looking around cautiously before slipping away into the shadows. I felt a cold numbness spread through me. The weight of the betrayal was almost too much to bear. The pieces of the puzzle now fit together in a clear, painful picture. The half-dressed morning, the overheard conversation at the cafe, and now this footage. It all pointed to the reality I was reluctant to accept. I sat there in the dark, the glow of the monitor, the only light. Feelings of sadness, anger, and disbelief waged a war inside of me. The woman I loved, the one I trusted more than anyone else, had betrayed me in the deepest way possible. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside. One thing was clear: I needed answers, and I was determined to get them. Edit. This has been the hardest thing I've ever had to write. Every moment feels surreal, like I'm in some twisted nightmare. Thanks for the outpouring of support. I never imagined sharing this here would help, but reading your comments gives me strength. More updates to come. That evening was probably the longest I'd ever endured. I paced our living room, waiting for Serafina to return from work. My mind was a hurricane of emotions, swirling with anger, pain, and a tiny glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, There was a reasonable explanation for all this. When the front door finally opened, I took a deep breath, attempting to steady my racing heart. Serafina walked in, her usual radiant smile on her face. "Hey, love," she greeted, but her smile faded the moment she saw my expression. "Jalen, what's wrong?" Without a word, I turned on the TV and played the security footage. The color drained from her face as she watched Drax enter and then leave our house. The silence that followed was deafening. I finally spoke up, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. "Sarah, how could you?" She looked like she was on the verge of tears. "Jalen, it's not what you think. Drax is just an old friend." "An old friend who sneaks into our house in the middle of the night?" I retorted, my patience wearing thin. She took a deep breath. "He was going through a tough time and needed someone to talk to. I didn't think you'd understand, so I didn't tell you." "That's your excuse? Secrets? Lies? In our own home, Sarah?" The weight of the betrayal was suffocating. She looked hurt. "I can't believe you're accusing me of this. After all we've been through, you really think I'd do something like that?" I felt cornered. "You're turning this on me, after what I just saw." Tears streamed down her face. "I never thought I'd see the day where my own husband wouldn't trust me. Drax needed help, and I was there for him as a friend. Nothing more." The room felt like it was closing in on me. I wanted to believe her, but the evidence, the secrets, the whispers, it was all too much. "So you expect me to just accept this? To believe it was all innocent?" She sobbed. "I just wish you'd trust me." The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension and unsaid words. Here we were, two people who promised to stand by each other, now miles apart in trust and understanding. The chasm between us felt insurmountable. The following morning was a blur of emotions. I had hardly slept, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. My morning coffee had lost its flavor, every sip a bitter reminder of the turbulence in my life. I decided to get some fresh air, hoping it would clear my mind. As I stepped out onto our porch, I noticed Luna, our neighbor, anxiously waiting by her front door. Luna was an enigmatic figure in our neighborhood, known for her love for plants and her strikingly beautiful blue-gray eyes. We had exchanged pleasantries a few times, but nothing more. Seeing me, she hurried over, her usually composed demeanor replaced with one of urgency. "Jalen," she began, her voice soft. I think you should see this." She handed me a small envelope. Inside were a series of photographs, each one like a dagger to my heart. They showed Drax and Serafina together, outside my house on various nights. Their body language spoke volumes, suggesting a familiarity that went beyond mere friendship. "I noticed him visiting when you were on your business trips," Luna admitted, her eyes filled with sympathy. "I thought you should know." I struggled to find words. "Luna? Why?" She sighed. "I've been through betrayal, Jalen. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, especially not someone living right next door. You deserve the truth." Feeling a mix of gratitude and anguish, I mumbled, "Thank you, I can't believe this is happening." Luna placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Trust your instincts, Jalen, and always remember, the truth has a way of surfacing." As she walked away, her words echoed in my mind. Here was an unexpected ally in my corner, guiding me to confront the reality I had been trying to avoid. It was another week of restless nights. With each revelation, the ground beneath me felt more and more unstable. But if I was to find the whole truth, I knew I had to keep digging. Remembering an old phone Serafina discarded a while back, I decided to see if it held any clues. But my tech skills were laughable, and I needed help. Enter Zeke, my childhood friend and a wizard with electronics. Zeke had been my go-to guy for any tech-related issues, from setting up my home theater to fixing computer glitches. I trusted him, and right now I needed someone on my side. Hesitatingly, I recounted the events of the past weeks to him. Zeke listened intently, his usually jovial face replaced by a solemn expression. "Let's see what we can find," he said, taking the phone from me. Within minutes, he managed to boot it up and bypass the security lock. "Let's check the messaging apps," he suggested. And there they were, a flood of messages between Serafina and Drax. I braced myself for the worst as we started scrolling through the conversation threads. The earlier messages were casual, discussing college memories and current life updates. But as time went on, the tone shifted. They began sharing dreams, fears, and secret desires. Then came the messages that felt like punches to my gut. Drax, "Every night with you feels like a stolen moment. I wish we didn't have to hide." Serafina, "Me too. It's hard pretending, especially with Jalen. I wish things were different." Drax, "Someday, we won't have to sneak around. We can be together, openly, without any fears." Serafina, "That's the dream, Drax. Just hold on a little longer." The screen blurred as tears welled up in my eyes. Zeke put a comforting hand on my back. "I'm so sorry, man," he whispered. The messages painted a clear picture. Their relationship was deeper and more entangled than I had ever imagined. The woman I had pledged my life to was dreaming of a future with another man. Edit. I'm at a loss for words. This feels like a cruel joke. Zeke has been a pillar of support, and I'm thankful for that. But the pain of these revelations is unbearable. To everyone sharing their stories and advice, thank you. I'm processing all of this slowly. I'll keep you updated. The fallout was swift and intense. I had imagined confronting Serafina immediately, but the weight of my discovery kept me paralyzed with pain. Maybe it was that hesitation that gave her the upper hand. It began subtly. Things would be out of place around the house. Personal items disappeared and then mysteriously reappeared days later. "Jalen," she'd coo, "you're becoming so forgetful. Maybe you need to see someone, get some rest." Then came the gatherings. At family dinners or outings with friends, she'd laughingly recount tales of my supposed lapses in memory or bouts of paranoia. "You won't believe what Jalen did the other day," she'd start, her stories making me sound unhinged and delusional. One evening, I overheard her talking to her sister on the phone. "I'm really worried about Jalen," she whispered, her voice dripping with fake concern. "He's been acting so strange lately, snooping around and accusing me of the wildest things. I think he might be having a breakdown." Soon, friends and family were looking at me differently. The hushed conversations, the pitying glances. I felt like a pariah in my own life. The more she twisted reality, the more I questioned my sanity. Maybe I was wrong. Perhaps those messages were innocent. Could the late-night meetings have been harmless? Desperation led to self-doubt. The gaslighting was working. There were moments I found myself staring in the mirror, wondering if the man looking back was indeed losing his mind. The worst part? The isolation. Friends, once close, now kept their distance. Conversations were brief, punctuated with awkward silences. Family gatherings became an exercise in endurance, with Serafina playing the concerned wife to perfection. The world as I knew it had shifted. Reality became a muddled, distorted reflection, and I was trapped in the center, struggling to find my footing. The weight of it all pressed down on me daily. Every whispered conversation, every sideways glance was a cruel reminder of the place I found myself in. Lost, doubting, and increasingly isolated. But I knew deep down that I couldn't live in this state of suspended disbelief forever. The answers, whatever they were, lay buried beneath layers of deceit. Determined, I decided to dig deeper into Serafina and Drax's history. I had to know how this began. A box of Serafina's old belongings, gathering dust in the attic, became my starting point. Sifting through it felt like intruding into another life, a life I was never meant to know. Between old journals and photo albums, a picture began to emerge. There was Serafina, noticeably younger, radiant with happiness beside Drax. They were in various places, beaches, mountaintops, city streets. Their smiles spoke of deep affection. I felt the pang of jealousy, a visceral reminder of the present. Then, buried among the pages of a diary, I found a folded letter, the edges yellowed with age. It was addressed to Serafina from Drax. Hesitatingly, I began to read. "Serafina, our love was never meant to be tangled in this web of family expectations and feuds. I'd give anything to be with you freely, without the shadows of our family's pasts looming over us. I still dream of the day we can be together, unburdened. Always yours, Drax. The pieces began to click into place. Further reading revealed a heartbreaking tale. Drax and Serafina had once been engaged, deeply in love, but torn apart due to a bitter family dispute. They had gone separate ways, nursing broken hearts, until their paths crossed again years later, after Serafina and I were married. The old flame, it seemed, had never died. They'd found solace in stolen moments, clinging to the memories of a love interrupted but never truly over. The realization was devastating. The foundation of my marriage was built on half-truths. The love I believed was uniquely ours was shadowed by a love story that predated our own. Edit. I'm shattered. Knowing the full truth somehow hurts more than the suspicion did. I feel like I've been living in someone else's love story, playing a part I never auditioned for. Thank you for being my sounding board, Reddit. Without you, I'd truly be alone in this. The house seemed eerily silent as I waited for Serafina to return from work. The emotions within me boiled, a mix of pain, anger, betrayal, and a fierce determination to face the truth head-on. She walked in, the clack of her heels on the wooden floor echoing through the hallway. Our eyes met, and the tension was palpable. Without uttering a word, I laid out the evidence before her. The photos, the messages, the letter from Drax. She scanned them briefly, then met my gaze with an icy, emotionless stare. There was no hint of the woman I once knew, the woman I'd pledged my heart to. This was someone else. "You've been busy," she remarked, her voice dripping with disdain. "Why, Serafina? Why all of this? Was there ever any truth to our love? To our life together?" She let out a derisive chuckle. You were the safe choice, Jalen. Steady, reliable, predictable. But passion? Love? Those were always reserved for Drax. You were just convenient. Her words were like sharp daggers, each one cutting deeper than the last. My mind raced, trying to grapple with the cruelty of her confession. So, all those years, our memories, the vows, all lies? I asked, my voice shaking. She shrugged. Sometimes we make choices out of necessity, not desire. I felt a rush of anger, my vision blurring with tears. I deserved the truth, Serafina. I deserved love, genuine love, not this twisted game you've been playing. She smirked. Life isn't fair, Jalen. You played your part and I played mine. It's time to move on. The coldness in her ease, the lack of remorse, it all hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't the Serafina I fell in love with, or maybe I'd never really known her at all. Leaving Chicago wasn't a fresh start. It was an attempt to escape the constant reminders of betrayal that seemed to lurk in every corner. I found myself on a highway heading to Seattle, not because it beckoned with promise, but because it was distant and unfamiliar. Each mile was a step away from what was, but not necessarily towards anything better. Seattle's gray skies did little to lift my spirits. Instead, they reflected the turmoil inside. I rented a small, dim-lit apartment away from the heart of the city. Its cold, undecorated walls mirrored the emptiness I felt. No warm welcome, just a space devoid of memories. I avoided contact as much as possible. The outside world seemed to move in vibrant colors while my existence faded into shades of gray. The laughter and joy of strangers felt alien, almost mocking. Meals were mechanical, eat to live, not live to eat. Sleep, when it came, was filled with dreams of confrontation, of seeking answers, of waking up to find it was all a nightmare. But each morning, reality reasserted itself with a cruelty that was unyielding. The faces at the local convenience store, the bus driver, the few coworkers I interacted with, they all became blurred images in the background of a life that felt more like mere existence. Connection seemed pointless. After all, the deepest connection I'd ever had was built on deception. Days turned into weeks, then months. The pain didn't fade. It merely settled, like a shadow I couldn't shake off. I stopped trying to outrun it, instead surrendering to its omnipresence. Edit. I wish I could tell you all that things got better, that there's a light at the end of this tunnel. But truth be told, right now, it feels never-ending. I read every message, every piece of advice, and while I appreciate them, the void remains. Thank you for listening, Reddit.